You are listening to the Concierge Minister Podcast, a place to grow, learn, and be inspired as you discover God's purpose for your life. Here's your host, the pastor you've always wanted without the church, Dr. Kumar Dixit.
Hey, what's up, you guys? I don't know if you survived Valentine's Day last month and if you got lucky and got laid, but I hope that you at least had somebody to love and to be able to connect with. You know, last year I interviewed somebody about the Great Sex Rescue, and it was really interesting the kind of feedback that I got from some of you guys and what people really thought about it. And believe it or not, Sheila Gregoire has repackaged a couple books that she and her husband just finished. It's called The Girl's Guide to Great Sex. And now wait for it, so you know that this is an equal opportunity here. And then the other book is called The Good Guy's Guide to Great Sex. So welcome both of you guys. Sheila is here as well as her husband, Dr. Keith Gregoire.
Thank you. Hello. It's great to be here.
Thanks for inviting us.
Great to see you guys. Keith, I want to start with you because I know you're a pediatrician, and here your wife is just writing like these disasterly secrets about men and talking about how we're just failing at everything that we're doing. Do you ever read it and go, oh my gosh, she's like spilling the secrets. I feel so insecure.
Oh yeah, all the time. It's funny, I got into this because Sheila wrote me in a while ago, and what husband doesn't long for the day that his wife will come to him and say, hey, how would you like to talk about our sex life in front of hundreds of people? Like, who doesn't look forward to that kind of a,
Yeah.
So we've been doing this for a while. I'm pretty used to it.
Well, you guys are great. And I love the fact that there's two approaches, with the two books. Just one of my, just hang-ups is that, we always talk about sex and how women can improve sex and how, and a lot of it has to do with what they need to change, So I love that you guys are really looking at both of it. Sheila, real quick, I want to tell you that I was doing premarital counseling with a couple, and I required them to read The Great Sex Rescue. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah. And what they loved the most was the questions at the end of the book, or at the end of each chapter.
Yep.
And they it really sparked a lot of conversation for them. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing. So tell me what's up with these books? Why did you write these two books together?
Well, so for those of you who remember and who listened to the Great Sex Rescue podcast, basically what I did was I surveyed 20,000 women. We did a huge study to find out if there are certain evangelical teachings that hurt women's marital and sexual satisfaction. And we found that there were quite a few, and that a lot of the teaching in this area has been terrible. But I kind of see this as an Ecclesiastes 3 thing. Like, there's a time to scatter stones and there's a time to gather stones together. So Great Sex Rescue was just scattering stones everywhere. This is like, we need to break this down. Yeah. We need to knock it out, pound it over the head, destroy and get it back to what it was intended to be. And now with the Good Guy's Guide to Great Sex and the Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex, we're asking the question, what would it look like if we just built a healthy sex life from the ground up, if we didn't have any of this toxic stuff to begin with? So now is the time where, we're gathering the stones together and we're trying to build. And yeah, I think they're really fun books. I hope that people will get them even before they're married and start off right, because we sure didn't. No. So yeah, these are like the books that we needed.
Yeah, I'm glad that you wrote it. I want to ask you, one of the things that really caught my attention was, you guys, talk about the secret to having an amazing honeymoon. What's the sexual secret that you guys should have? So tell us right now. Give us a little insight.
Okay. Well, do you want me to give the stats and then you can tell?
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Why don't we do that?
Okay. So we looked at two groups of people, right? So we looked at people who had only ever had sex with each other. Mm-hmm. And we controlled for abuse. And then we looked at women who had sex before they were married and women who waited for marriage. And what we found is that if you waited, your chance of having vaginismus or primary sexual pain went up by 25%.
Okay. That's not good news for.
No, it's not. Now, we're not arguing that everyone should go have sex before they're married. Okay. But what we are saying is that there is something seriously wrong with the way that we're doing sex on the honeymoon. Because if you think about it, when people who want to wait for marriage have sex before marriage, why? It's probably because they watched a rom-com and then they were making out for a couple of hours and then hands started wandering and then it just happened. So like they were feeling close, they were super aroused. And yet what happens on the wedding night? You've just had the longest day of your life, following the most stressful couple of weeks of your life. And then you end up in this hotel room or your apartment or wherever, and you're super awkward and you don't know what to do. And it's just really strange. And so let's get that bewildering, strange feeling and not have that. Let's do it differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Because for guys, sex can be very automatic. All right. But for women, there's a lot more, mental awareness that has to be there. Stress and difficulty and fatigue and all that stuff impacts them a lot more. And so what happens is now you're on your wedding night and, well, you gotta, like you can't not, because like he's waited so long. And then it's a terrible experience because it's not in the context of what sex is meant to be. Like it's meant to be fun and enjoyable and a discovery of each other instead of this like, well, now we have to sort of thing. And so you talked earlier about how we have been giving a lot of instruction to women, but we haven't been giving instruction to men. And you're absolutely right. And that's what we hope to address with the Good Guys Guide. And this is a perfect example. We need to get guys to stop focusing on sex and start focusing on arousal. If we as men learned how to make our wives aroused and we focused on that, then sex would naturally flow out of that, as opposed to, well, we haven't in a few days, so let's, and expecting her to just suddenly jump in and be happy. And that's the way it works,
Yeah, no, I that's such a great quotable quote, like we need to train guys not to have sex, but teach them how to arouse, their partner. I think that's such a key piece because I think that, for a lot of people, it's the mechanics. It's like, put it in and that's it. It's not really talking about just what you said, like, on the wedding night for a lot of, especially in particular for women, if it's their first night, they have this glorious idealization of what it's supposed to be like. And, like you just said, Sheila, you're tired, you've eaten a lot of cake, it's, one of the things I do when I do weddings, I always, so I might be a chauvinist, but every time I marry a couple, I always take the guy aside and I go, here's a couple things you need to know. One, you guys have permission not to have sex tonight because you're exhausted and you're done, and just be like, hey, let's make this really special tomorrow. Or And then the second thing is I always say to them, buy some lube. Like you just never know, buy some lube, be prepared in case you need it. And then be reminded that this is a princess who's waiting for a magical moment. And so you need to do whatever you need to do to make that an emotionally erotic and physical experience. Yeah. I never asked them afterwards if they did anything I asked them to do, but I do think that it goes to making sure that, that the couples understand that there's a high level of expectation. And so they need to be ready for that as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's true, even if you've had sex before, because so many people getting married, of course, are not virgins today. But even if you have had sex, often it wasn't necessarily very good. And people do want that clean start, that clean break. And so saying, we want to set us up for a few decades, the next few decades of amazing sex. And so let's do this right. And let's see it as a clean break.
Yeah, I think it's great. And the other thing I always do with couples that I'm counseling is I try to make them to make a commitment to not have sex from the time that we start counseling until they get married. And I'm like, I said, you're going to be so horny. You're going to be so nuts. You're going to be like, just scratching the wall. So do it just for that reason, that you can experience something that feels like it's new again to you,
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that you're talking about the idea or the of vaginismus. Whenever I see that word, I get scared to say it out loud, but just remind my one listener what that means.
Yes. So it's a sexual dysfunction disorder where the muscles of the vaginal wall contract or get really tight. and it makes penetration difficult or impossible. And Christian women or religious conservative women suffer from it at roughly twice the rate of the general population. So there's something about the way that we talk about sex that actually ends up hurting women.
And I think, in this Great Sex Rescue book, you talked about the fact that it has high correlations, the same numbers as women who've been abused.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's highly correlated with the obligation sex message. So this idea that she is obligated to give him sex whenever he wants it.
So I'm so glad the husband and wife are together, because, you never get that, when you're talking about counseling and sexuality. But one of the challenges I think in most relationships is the level of frequency of sex, so it's like 4 times a week, the first year. And then it kind of just like, peters out to, maybe 1 time or 2 times a week. And then you start Googling and you're like, am I normal? How often do other people, have sex during the week? And it's like all over the place. Right. And some couples schedule it. Like, it's like every Wednesday night after prayer meeting. So what do you say to couples who are kind of fighting about that idea of frequency and how often they should do it?
Yeah, we actually have a very big section near the end of the Good Guys Guide where we talk about that specifically. I think to sort of summarize it here, I'd say that we need to think of, if there's a lack of frequency in a marriage, we need to think of that as a symptom, not as a disease. Okay. Because historically in the church, we've sort of said, oh, you're not having sex enough, so tell whoever doesn't want to have sex to have more. And that's the answer. And that's not a healthy answer. We need to figure out what's going on and what's caused things to happen. Is it a scheduling thing? Well, then fix the scheduling thing. Is it a desire thing? Has there been trust broken? What's happened to derail things, and we need to repair that rather than just saying, if we turn up the sexometer, everything's going to get better. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because what we found is that when women feel emotionally close during sex, when there's high marital satisfaction, when they frequently orgasm, when there's no sexual dysfunction, and when there's no porn use, frequency pretty much takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
we're saying this because typically in most marriages, it's the woman with the lower drive that, not always, but that's why she's saying for women, right?
Mm-hmm. And so it's like, what else is going on? And it doesn't mean that he's the one with the problem. Like, maybe the reason that she doesn't feel emotionally close during sex has nothing to do with her husband and everything to do with sexual trauma in her background or with some of the negative messages about sex that she's internalized. It doesn't mean there's necessarily something wrong with the marriage. It just means there's something that we need to work on together or individually. And that's a healthier way to see it, because when you just pressure people to have more sex, it's like we're forgetting what sex is for. Because sex, and this is a big thing we say in the books, it's not just about physical intimacy, it's emotional and it's spiritual as well. And if somebody doesn't want sex and you tell them, no, I get to use your body, you need to have it more, that makes sex into something only physical. So it's no longer this intimate, deep knowing of someone. It's just becomes an owing, and that's ugly. We don't want sex to become ugly. So, and besides that, you know what? People tend to like to do fun things. Yeah. If something is fun and it makes them feel good, they tend to want to do it. So if somebody doesn't want to do it, we need to ask why, as opposed to just saying, you must be a selfish person.
Yeah. And we hope with the Good Guys Guide to give men a lot of good advice. I mean, there's some really good philosophical stuff in there, but there's also some very good practical stuff about, let's make this a great experience for your wife. Instead of saying, I'm not getting enough, how can I persuade, cajole, convince her to do more? What can I do to make this a great experience for her? That is something she really wants to partake in, and then we can have an amazing time together. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So there's in your other book, Sheila, The Great Sex Rescue, there's quite a bit of talk about like release, this false idea that men have to, have an ejaculation every like 72 hours or something, and you kind of like, debunk that. But there is the idea, like, I know couples who will be like, I know you want to have sex, just do me and get it over with, I hear you saying, I want there to be mutuality, for everybody, but is it okay if sometimes somebody's just like, you know what, just Do what you need to do, because
as long as it's sometimes. And that's the key thing. Because here's the issue. Okay. There's a 47-point orgasm gap.
Yeah. Talk to me about that.
In the church. So 95% of men almost always reach orgasm during sexual encounter. Only 48% of women do. So there's a lot of women who are not enjoying sex physically very much. And when we asked both men and women, does he do enough foreplay? When women frequently reach orgasm, over 90% of both men and women say, yes, he does enough foreplay. But when women don't frequently reach orgasm, 71% of men still say, yes, I do enough foreplay. But so do I think the number is 56% or 52% or something like that of women. It's over half of women still say, yes, he does enough foreplay. And our question is, enough for what? What is our measure? He's not reaching orgasm, but they're still saying that he's doing enough. And I think the reason is because we actually don't think we deserve it. A lot of women just think I must be broken because I'm not enjoying this the way he is. He's the sexual one and I'm not. There's something wrong with me. And here he is, he's trying and it's not doing anything for me. So the problem must be me. When really it could just be that you guys don't understand the sexual response cycle at all. And we've never learned how to work with her body.
Yeah. And I think that's especially, Keith, you're a pediatrician. So I'm really interested in this idea that, we don't really tell kids or teach kids to really explore their bodies and to kind of figure out what feels good and where their body parts are. We've just shamed it in such a way, in such a utilitarian manner. It's like, this is where you go pee-pee and that's it, so, but we haven't really taught them that this is also a pleasure spot and that it is okay for you to figure out what's enjoyable. How do you do that in such a way that kind of maintains Christian integrity and human biology?
I think the first thing is for us to get over the fact that sexuality isn't bad. Because I think, frankly, in the church, we see sex as a bad thing. There's shame associated with just being sexual. But God made us sexual, and we need to be able to somehow get to an ethic that allows us to fully embrace the healthy sexuality that God intended for us to have. But right now, we either have a shame-based or an obligation-based view of sexuality, and there's no healthy view. And we're trying to work toward that. That's a whole podcast in itself, how to talk to kids about it. But I think we need to focus on talking to just adult Christian husbands about it, because I don't think most men understand how women work. We were talking about the honeymoon night, and the reason you're fooling around and getting all excited beforehand is because you have decided you're not going to have sex, so you do everything else, and it's fun and it's really enjoyable, and you're afraid it's going to take you too far. But then you get married and it's like, well, all that stuff's off the table. Let's go right to the end zone, right? And that's what we do as guys, and we somehow think that's normal, and we need to train guys to, hey, whoa, remember all that fun stuff that you used to do? Yeah. You can still do that when you're married.
Right. I
and enjoy that and revel in that sexuality and how much fun it is.
So I want to just go backwards for a brief moment, just because, we talked about, because I think it's important also just to talk about the biological reactions. Like, for example, a few months ago, I changed depression medicine and I was on it for like 4, 5, 6 weeks. And funny story, we'll see if this stays into the podcast because I'll have to get permission from my wife. But she was changing and, I walked right past her. I mean, I didn't slap her butt. I didn't grab her. I didn't do whatever I always do. I just walked right past her, but didn't brush my teeth. And then I came out and I said, oh, by the way, I said, I think this new medication is affecting my libido. I have zero sex drive. And she kind of looked at me. She's like, yeah, I was just thinking that this morning, what's up with this guy walking by me and not in 20 years trying to make a move, And it was so obvious, that, okay, I need to do something different. So sometimes there's biological and chemical factors that we also need to look into for why there may be some dysfunction in the sexuality.
Yeah, I think especially, I guess I should let you take this point because you're the doctor, but I think especially for men, a lot of sexual dysfunction can be early warning signs of something else. And so guys, we know you don't like seeing the doctor. You got to go see the doctor.
Yeah.
But you're right. God has made us physical beings, and our physical health does impact our sexuality for sure. And there's a lot of things we talk about that in the book as well. And I think that a lot of men are embarrassed to go to their doctor or talk about things like that. And I always try and encourage men to not be embarrassed about going to your doctor. It's not the strangest thing that your doctor's going to hear today. So just be honest, tell them what's going on, and they'll be able to deal with it. So,
and
you really need to get rid of shame. Yeah. So,
yeah. And with the amount of ED commercials that are on TV, you have to realize you really are not the only person. That commercial is not for you. There are millions and millions of people that are experiencing that phenomenon.
Exactly.
Hey guys, this is Kumar, your concierge minister. I want to just let you know that I would be honored to record a prayer for you so that you can listen to it anytime that you're discouraged or you need some encouragement. Just send me a message at conciergeminister@gmail.com with your phone number and what you want me to pray for you about, whether it's a blessing, possibilities for God to enlarge your life with abundance. This is free of charge, no gimmicks, no hassle. Just shoot me a note and I will send you a personalized prayer for you so you can hang on to when you need some hope in your life. Okay, follow me for a brief moment because I got a story to tell you. So I'm one of the youth leaders in my church. I teach junior high, middle school. I also teach high school ministry. And we were doing a sex talk about 2 weeks ago. And we were talking about, how far you should go, how far you shouldn't go. And one of the things I talked about to the kids was, look, when you're in the heat of it and you're like making out and buttons are coming off, I was like, the dopamine hit is so strong, you're not going to rationally think about where my boundaries are. Mm-hmm. And so that's why as a young man or woman, you have to really make those decisions now, because when you're actually in that moment, you can be reminded of, okay, I've made a decision not to go this far. Mm-hmm. And as I was talking about that, I was jokingly saying, there's not a lot of talking that takes place when you're, fooling around. And one of the, guys just kind of raised his, eyebrows, like a 14-year-old. I was like, what are you thinking? And he goes, oh, I thought there's a lot of talking that goes on. And I was like, oh, okay, like what? And he's like, like dirty talk. And he's like slapping and choking. And I was like, OMG, I am not prepared to talk about this. And so one of the things I just said, look, this is a co-ed group. I said, I think what you're describing is what teenagers often see in pornography, but may not necessarily be kind of the natural relationships. I said, so what you're saying is like a lot of physical harm that people think is okay. And it's debasing to women, I think, as well. But it was just a holy smokes moment for me to kind of realize that, kids are just completely having a different idea of what human sexuality is, with one another. So we're not going to get rid of porn. Porn is there. It's popular. I mean, I think you said in your book, it's like 44% of men, Christian men, look at porn. Is that right?
I think it's 49.6 who are currently using it at some level, even if it's just rarely. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, obviously they are kind of developing what they think sexually things should happen based on what they're watching a 4 to 12 minute video, online. So how do we address this with not just kids, but also just in the marital home?
Well, I would say the first thing is that so far the strategy has been, don't do it. It's been sort of porn is bad, avoid it. But we haven't replaced it with anything else. And I think that the key to defeating porn is to realize it for what it is, which is a counterfeit of the good thing that God created, which is a healthy sexuality. Pornography is based upon one person using another person for their own physical needs or desires. Mm-hmm. True sex is meant to be a mutual knowing of two people. It's something that's meant to be more than just physical. It's emotional, spiritual. It's such a deep, mutual, beautiful thing. And I think we need to be replacing this pornographic style of relating with a healthy sexuality.
Mm-hmm. I also think, especially when it comes to teenagers, just as an aside, the whole approach of porn is bad, it's a sin, don't do it. Well, that might be true. It hasn't worked particularly well because we have, we looked at, if you look at the stats for men under the age of 40, upwards of like 83% of men have used porn at some point in their life. So, and often that starts in their teenage years. Mm-hmm. So no matter how much we say it's a sin, they're going to use it. So how about if we just have a different messaging, which is that's sex trafficking and you're watching someone being abused? Because people respond to that a lot more. And that's very true. And I think if we can just recognize that the reason that you don't watch porn isn't just because it hurts you. It isn't just because it hurts your marriage. It's because it's hurting actual real people. This is not a victimless crime. And even so-called consensual porn is not consensual. Like just look at what happened on Pornhub that was in the news multiple times last year for all of the sexual assault videos that were up. And even some of the so-called consensual sites, a lot of those women are victims of sexual abuse and sexual as children. Do we really call that consensual? So I think if we talk to teens more from a justice standpoint, they would get that a lot more, and it would give them more, just more strength to withstand it. Because it is a difficult thing to withstand when you've got, you're curious, you're starting to have sexual feelings, everybody's doing it, It's normal to turn to it. But if they realize, no, I don't want to masturbate to someone being raped. I think when people realize, wait a minute, I do not want to masturbate to someone being raped, then it's a lot easier to stop looking at it.
Yeah. That's a really good way to prevent people from doing that. Yeah. It's a total justice point of view. I think that's really great. Okay. So here's one of my last questions for you guys. Couples been married for 20 years, 25 years. They're really, really, really great friends. Like they're like roommates. They're really good friends. But, having sex hasn't happened in a couple of years, like longer than either of them want to admit. It's kind of like when you stop saying I love you to somebody, it's really awkward to start over again. Be like, I love you. It just sounds weird. It sounds awkward. So what does this couple do when they are great friends? They have so many mutual, activities that they do and hobbies, but sexually it's just been done for years.
I think you got to figure out why, first of all, because there could be so many different reasons. A lot of times it is just because it never felt good for her. Sometimes they just had a lot of sexual trauma they never dealt with. It could be something where one or both just needs some professional counseling and go get that. Sometimes though, it's just like life gets busy and then you just get out of the habit. Like, okay, when we were growing up, everybody went to bed at either 10:20 or 11:15. Because at 10:20, the local news was over. And at 11:15, Johnny Carson's monologue was over. And so you either stayed up to watch the local news or you stayed up to watch Johnny Carson and then you went to bed. Because that was it. There's nothing else to do. There's nothing else on TV. But today we've got the internet, we've got video games. And so a lot of people have gotten into just habits of falling asleep on the couch, of being on the internet in different rooms. And it's like you just lose that connection. And so try going to bed together. It's such a little thing, but get a bedtime. I know you're adults, but adults can have bedtimes too. Get a bedtime. And then if everyone needs to be up at 6:30, you want to be asleep by 10:30, then start going to bed at like 9:30 and read a book for 15 minutes, chat for a bit, and then you have time to do something, but let's get a bedtime. It makes a tremendous difference. And sometimes if you just need to get out of the rut, scheduling sex is not a bad idea.
And there are sometimes medical things that intervene too, especially, as men get older, sometimes testosterone levels can change. Sometimes medications or other things can affect your libido. So that could be part of the reason as well too. So talking to your doctor about those issues would be good as well.
Can you talk a little bit more about scheduling sex?
Well, okay. Because one of the problems is if sex has become awkward, then initiating sex is awkward because you're not sure how to initiate. You're not sure what they're going to say. And then what you do is you spend every day nervous Like, is he expecting something tonight? Is she wanting something tonight? Like, is she trying to give me signals that I'm not picking up on? And so you're constantly worried about this. Whereas if you schedule it every Wednesday, every Saturday, we're going to try to rock each other's worlds, then you don't need to worry about it on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, you can shave your legs. you can think, okay, we're going to have fun tonight. I'll put on my pretty underwear. The guys can put on the stuff that doesn't have holes in it. Like you can. And it's just not quite as awkward, because sometimes when you haven't had sex in a long time, just that awkwardness takes over. And so it's a way to break that awkwardness.
Yeah. And again, when you are engaging again, after being away from a long time, it's just don't be so goal oriented, like just enjoy each other. We'll see where it goes. And, because our bodies are funny, like, we make weird noises, like everything it can be weird. And we just need to relax and embrace it for what it is and enjoy each other and not have a sort of racing for the finish line kind of mentality.
Yeah. I think, Keith, you're saying something that I think is fairly new to me. And that is, I was interviewing Sarah Kubrick, who's a therapist, and we were talking about relationships and sexuality. And one of the things she said is, even though you've been together for like 20, 30 years, like still keep some mystery between the two of you. Like, don't take a dump in front of each other. That's what she said, she's like, you don't have to like brush your teeth and, spit and all gross in front of the other. Like leave some level of mystery between each other. Like, guys, like don't burp and fart and do all that just gross stuff. It's not attractive. And then you're wondering, like, why is your woman not like attracted to you? It's because you do disgusting things. and it's really important to kind of remember that those parts are as important for men to know about themselves. What do you think about that?
Sheila gets a lot of comments from wives about how they just would love if their husbands would just take a little bit of grooming. A little bit of grooming goes a long way. But they're often too afraid to talk to their husbands about it because they're afraid he's going to be offended or that sort of thing. And guys, we need to be, we need to take care of ourselves as well too. We have a big expectation in society that women are going to look their best, but we don't put a lot of that on ourselves as guys all the time. And we should take some of that on as well, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's an old adage to think that, only men are into appearances. I think as we become in much more of a non-binary world, that women also are into appearances, and they see things that are sexy and they want you to, manscape as well, if that's important to you, right?
Yeah, or at least, at the very least, brush your teeth. The number of women who complain to me that my husband doesn't brush his teeth, and then I just don't want to kiss a sewer. So
yeah, that's good. The other thing I wanted to just ask you on my last question, I wanted to ask you guys. She just never wants to do it, and she just has a laundry list of things she, wants to get done, and she can't think about anything but her big checklist. And one of the things that I say to guys usually is like, don't tell her the secret, okay? But it is true. Like, she needs to get a whole bunch of stuff out of her head and done before she has sex with you. And so for you to bring it up to her, even like the day before, even that morning, and say something like, slap her on the ass and be like, hey, you look so hot. Let's do it tonight. And she'll be like, oh, okay. But then for the next 12 hours, she's like, we're doing it tonight. I need to like finish those bills. I need to like do those lunges. I need to, just do all of these things that I have in my head. So by the time she's able to like go to bed with him, at least she's a little bit more prepared and at ease rather than thinking about the laundry list of things that she's doing. What do you think?
So I think the thing I would nuance that with is I would just kind of say to the guys, hey, what you're telling me is your wife's carrying a lot of what we call mental load. So it's not even necessarily the things that need to get done. It's the fact that she feels responsible for it. So, I would say, what is it that you could do that would help share some of that mental load? Maybe there's things that you could take on,
Yeah, go ahead.
Even simply, if it's not necessarily going to do something, one of the things I love is, just take your wife out for a walk and just talk about things. Because if she's nervous about something, if she's worried about something, and she can just get it off her chest and let you know, I'm worried about our daughter because of this, or I'm worried about this aspect of what's going on in the house, or things like that. And she can just talk about those things and get them off her chest. Then she can feel much more free to be with you in the bedroom later that night, because she's not got her brain going in 16 different directions, worrying about all these other things.
Yep.
I think that's great advice. And I'm thinking about during the pandemic, probably the greatest thing that improved my marriage was the daily walk that we started going on. You know, it was just couldn't go anywhere else, and all of a sudden we started becoming birders and started identifying trees, and we started.
He's a huge birder.
Is he? Yeah. We became total geeks, and who knew that hour of just undivided attention that we never really got before, especially when you have children and you just make up all these other, you know, things that get in the way, would actually really, really strengthen the marriage. Thank you guys so much. Love what you're doing. Sheila, I don't know. I feel like it's like an Amway scheme. I'm like only giving your books out to couples now. So now, you know.
Ooh, I love you. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Now they're getting, you know, not just, you know, it's not that they're only getting the great sex rescue, but now they're getting the good girls guide and the good guys guide. I love it. So tell me a little bit about what's next for you. I know you have a bear marriage podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So every Thursday, Bear Marriage Podcast, it's usually me and our daughter, Rebecca, who's one of the co-authors for The Great Sex Rescue, but Keith joins us a lot too. And then we have other guests as well. And just, again, looking at sex, marriage, and how can we make it healthy, evidence-based, and biblical. So we're not just giving our opinion. We're trying to look at what research actually says. So that's a big thing for us. And of course, you can find me at toLoveHonorAndVacuum.com. All of our books are there. Our orgasm course, our libido course, our how to talk to your kids about puberty and sex course. All of that is there too. So
that's really great. I'm gonna have to look into that. I didn't know about the how to talk to kids. So that's a great one. Maybe I should do my own seminar on like how to orgasm for men. It'll only be 30 seconds long, but I can make a lot of money off of it. So anyways, thanks guys for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting
Great
us.
to be here again.
Thanks for listening to the Concierge Minister podcast. If you want to learn more about growing in your faith or looking for an online faith community for support while you're on your journey, please visit conciergeminister.com or send us an email at conciergeminister@gmail.com. Don't forget to click the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating. If you find this podcast helpful, please tell your friends about us. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, go and live your best life.